Lando is the 2025 world champion after a dominant win. Ferrari has its worst race of the season so far, and Hamilton is furious with the FIA. Formula One legend Lewis Hamilton just dropped some explosive words that are sending shockwaves through the motorsport world, and trust me, this controversy is far bigger than just another racing incident. When one of the most successful drivers in F1 history calls the sports officials a complete joke on live radio, you know something serious just went down at the Brazilian Grand Prix. Picture this scenario. You're Lewis Hamilton, 7-time world champion, racing for Ferrari in what should be one of the most exciting weekends of the season. Instead, you find yourself starting from 13th place on the grid, already facing an uphill battle. But what happened next turned a challenging race into an absolute nightmare that has the entire F1 community talking. The drama unfolded almost immediately after the green flag dropped at Interlagos. Hamilton's race start was nothing short of disastrous, plummeting from 13th all the way down to 17th position. The Ferrari driver found himself caught in the chaos of the midfield, where racing inches apart at incredible speeds can make or break your entire weekend in a split second. Now here's where things get really interesting. As Hamilton was battling to recover positions, he found himself alongside Franco Colapinto, the young Williams driver who has been making waves in his rookie season. Hamilton had actually praised Colapinto earlier in the weekend, calling his performances amazing. But racing is unforgiving. And what happened next changed everything. The two cars made contact as they raced down the main straight. Hamilton's Ferrari suffered immediate and severe damage, with the front wing being completely dislodged from the car. This wasn't just a minor scrape the drivers can recover from. The impact caused significant damage to the floor of the Ferrari, compromising the car's aerodynamics and making it virtually impossible to compete at the level needed in Formula One. But here's the part that really ignited Hamilton's fury. The FIA stewards reviewed the incident and decided to penalize Hamilton with a 5-second time penalty, ruling that he was at fault for the collision with Colapinto. This decision sent the British driver into an absolute rage that was captured live on team radio for the world to hear. Hamilton's response was immediate and unfiltered. He called the stewards a complete joke over the team radio, his frustration clearly boiling over after what he felt was an unfair assessment of the incident. According to Hamilton, Colapinto had moved over on him during the racing action, causing the contact that damaged his front wing. The stewards, however, saw the situation completely differently. What makes this controversy even more explosive is the context surrounding Hamilton's relationship with the FIA stewards recently. This wasn't an isolated incident of frustration. Just one race weekend earlier in Mexico, Hamilton had already clashed with the governing body. After receiving a 10-second penalty for leaving the track and gaining an advantage in a battle with Max Verstappen, he had expressed feeling let down by the FIA's decision-making process. The technical impact of the collision was devastating for Hamilton's race. The damage to his Ferrari was so severe that the car was losing between 30 and 40 points of downforce, making it extremely difficult to handle through high-speed corners. Hamilton described the car as snapping unpredictably, forcing him to give everything just to maintain control, while having no realistic chance of competing with the drivers ahead of him. The situation became so unmanageable that Ferrari eventually made the difficult decision to retire Hamilton's car from the race entirely. He was instructed to park the Ferrari in the pit lane, ending what he would later describe as a weekend to forget. This marked only the second time this season that Hamilton had failed to finish a race, making the disappointment even more crushing. Hamilton's post-race reflections revealed the depth of his disappointment, not just with the incident itself, but with the broader implications for his team. He expressed feeling terrible for the entire Ferrari crew, acknowledging that every single person in the organization shows up each weekend and gives their absolute best effort. To walk away with nothing after all that hard work was devastating for everyone involved. The 7-time world champion also took responsibility for his part in the disappointing weekend, particularly regarding his qualifying performance that left him starting from 13th place. He acknowledged that putting himself in that difficult starting position contributed to the challenges he faced during the race. This latest controversy raises serious questions about the consistency and fairness of FIA steward decisions in Formula One. When a driver of Hamilton's caliber and experience publicly challenges the officials in such strong terms, it reflects broader concerns within the sport about how racing incidents are evaluated and penalized. The timing of this clash couldn't be more significant, as Formula One continues to navigate questions about officiating standards and the impact of steward decisions on championship battles and driver careers. Hamilton's public criticism adds another layer to ongoing discussions about transparency and accountability in the sport's governance. As Formula One moves forward from this controversial weekend, The reverberations of Hamilton's explosive comments will undoubtedly continue to fuel debates about fairness, consistency, and the relationship between drivers and officials in the world's premier motorsport series. The moment that changed everything for Oscar Piastri's championship hopes just got even worse. If you thought a 10-second penalty was harsh enough, wait until you hear what the stewards decided to add on top of that. This story has layers that go way deeper than just one collision, and by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why this incident could define the entire championship battle. Picture this scene at Interlagos. The safety car has just pulled in after an early disruption, and the field is bunched up tighter than a can of sardines. Kimi Antonelli in his Mercedes finds himself in the worst possible position, sitting like a duck in the middle of the track, with two hungry predators closing in fast. Charles Leclerc on the outside, Oscar Piastri diving down the inside, and everyone knows someone's going to get squeezed. What happened next was like watching a perfectly choreographed disaster in slow motion. Piastri committed to the inside line at turn 1. That treacherous downhill left-hander that's claimed more victims than we can count. But here's where things went sideways. Literally. The McLaren driver locked up his brakes as he realized he was in too deep, his front left wheel making contact with Antonelli's Mercedes. The domino effect was instant and brutal. Antonelli, now a passenger in his own car, collected Leclerc on the outside, ending the Ferrari driver's race before it had really begun. Now, here's where this story gets really interesting, because what seemed like a standard racing incident has become a masterclass in how Formula One's penalty system actually works. The stewards didn't just hand out punishment based on gut feeling. They pulled out the official driving standards guidelines, and what they found there painted a very different picture of what happened on track. According to those guidelines, any driver attempting an inside overtake must have their front axle positioned at least alongside the mirror of the car they're trying to pass, both before and at the apex of the corner. Think of it like a minimum threshold for what constitutes a legitimate overtaking attempt versus what the stewards call diving in. Piastri failed this test spectacularly. His McLaren simply wasn't far enough forward when the crucial moment arrived. But wait, there's more to this technical breakdown. The guidelines also require that any overtaking move be executed in a fully controlled manner, especially from corner entry to apex. When Piastri locked his brakes and slid into Antonelli, he violated this fundamental principle of racecraft. The stewards concluded he was wholly responsible for the collision, a damning verdict that carries serious consequences. Here's where the plot thickens even further. The initial 10-second penalty that everyone saw during the race was just the beginning. What many viewers missed was the post-race penalty summary that revealed an additional punishment that could prove far more costly in the long run. 2 penalty points were added to Piastri's racing license, bringing his 12-month total to a dangerous 8 points. Why does this matter so much? In Formula One, accumulating 12 penalty points within a rolling 12-month period triggers an automatic race ban. Piastri now sits just 4 points away from that threshold, meaning his next significant incident could sideline him for an entire race weekend. For a driver fighting for championship position, that's a nightmare scenario that could derail an entire season's work. The stewards' decision becomes even more intriguing when you dig into the penalty guidelines they consulted. The baseline punishment for causing a collision is indeed a 10-second penalty, but those same guidelines typically recommend 3 penalty points, not the 2 that Piastri received. Did the stewards show mercy, or did they consider mitigating factors that weren't immediately apparent to observers? This incident perfectly illustrates the razor-thin margins that separate aggressive racing from reckless driving in modern Formula One. Piastri's move wasn't malicious or deliberately dangerous, but it crossed the technical threshold that separates acceptable risk from unacceptable consequences. The stewards had to draw a line, and unfortunately for the Australian, he found himself on the wrong side of it. The immediate aftermath of the collision actually worked in Piastri's favor initially. He found himself running second behind teammate Lando Norris, probably thinking he'd gotten away with a racing incident that would be forgotten by the next corner. Reality hit hard when he served that 10-second penalty at his first pit stop, dropping him down to 7th place and effectively killing his chances of a podium finish. What makes this situation even more frustrating for McLaren is how it unfolded during such a critical phase of the championship battle. Every point matters. When you're fighting for both drivers' and constructors' titles, and losing potential podium points to an avoidable incident stings twice as hard. The penalty points on Piastri's license add another layer of complexity to McLaren's strategic calculations for the remaining races. The precedent set by this decision will undoubtedly influence how drivers approach similar situations in future races. The stewards have essentially drawn a clear line in the sand about what constitutes acceptable inside overtaking attempts. Drivers now know that half-hearted dive bombs will be punished not just with time penalties, but with license points that could accumulate into race bans. Looking ahead, Piastri and McLaren face a delicate balancing act. They need the Australian to continue his aggressive driving style that's made him so competitive, but they also need him to stay within the technical boundaries that keep him race eligible. With 8 penalty points already accumulated, every wheel-to-wheel battle becomes a calculated risk that could determine not just individual race outcomes, but championship destinies. This incident at Interlagos will be remembered as more than just another racing collision. It's become a defining moment that perfectly encapsulates the fine line between championship ambition and championship disaster in Formula One's modern era. What happens when a Formula One driver tells his critics to shut up and then backs it up with pure speed? Well, you get one of the most savage moments of the 2025 season, and it comes from Lando Norris after his dominant Brazilian Grand Prix victory. Picture this. You're leading the championship, you've just won your second race in a row, and instead of celebrating, you're basically telling everyone who doubted you to keep their opinions to themselves. That's exactly what Norris did, and honestly, it might be the most confident we've ever seen him. The Brazilian Grand Prix weekend was supposed to be another chapter in what looked like Oscar Piastri's march to his first world title. Instead, it became the moment where Norris completely flipped the script on the 2025 championship fight. With Piastri struggling to 5th place while dealing with another penalty-filled weekend, Norris extended his championship lead to 24 points and made a statement that echoed far beyond the Interlagos circuit. But here's where it gets really interesting. After climbing out of his McLaren, looking exhausted despite what seemed like a comfortable victory, Norris was asked about how he found this incredible rhythm at such a crucial point in the season. His response was brutally honest and surprisingly raw. The McLaren driver didn't give some generic answer about hard work and dedication. Instead, he delivered one of the most memorable quotes of the season. He said the key to his recent success has been learning to ignore everyone who talks negatively about him. Just focus on yourself, he explained, and let your driving do the talking. Now, this isn't just some throwaway comment from a driver riding high on victory. This represents a fundamental shift in Norris's mentality. For years, we've watched him be perhaps too hard on himself, too focused on what others might think. The pressure of being in a championship-capable car seemed to weigh heavily on him at times. But something changed during this title fight. The really fascinating part is that Norris wasn't even completely satisfied with his performance in Brazil. Despite winning by 10 seconds and putting together what many considered a masterclass weekend, he admitted that he didn't think McLaren had the fastest car on track. That honor, he believed, went to Max Verstappen, who delivered one of his legendary comeback drives from the pit lane to 3rd place. This level of honesty and self-awareness, while simultaneously dismissing critics, shows a driver who's found the perfect balance between confidence and humility. Norris acknowledged that watching Verstappen's pace actually disappointed him because it highlighted areas where he and McLaren could still improve. That's the mindset of a true competitor. The emotional weight of this victory also can't be overlooked. Norris dedicated the win to Gil de Ferran, a beloved McLaren figure who passed away in 2023. De Ferran had been a mentor to Norris, and you could see the genuine emotion when he spoke about thinking of Gil while driving. It added a layer of significance to the victory that went beyond championship points. What makes this whole situation even more compelling is the contrast with his teammate. While Piastri appeared to be cruising toward the championship just a few races ago, he's now watching Norris put together a 4-race podium streak that includes back-to-back victories. The momentum has completely shifted, and Norris seems to be feeding off it. The psychological aspect of Norris's comments reveals something profound about modern Formula One. In an era where social media amplifies every criticism and every opinion, learning to filter out the noise has become as crucial as mastering racing lines. Norris has clearly developed this skill, and it's showing in his on-track performance. McLaren's role in this transformation shouldn't be underestimated either. Norris specifically praised the team for giving him a great car and supporting his push for the championship. The synergy between driver and team is evident, and it's creating results when it matters most. The timing of this mental breakthrough is perfect for Norris. With the championship fight intensifying and pressure mounting, He's found a way to block out external pressure while maintaining his competitive edge. His comment about working hard away from the track shows this isn't just about natural talent but dedicated preparation. Looking at the broader championship picture, Norris's attitude shift could be the defining factor in this title fight. He's not just winning races, he's doing it with a confidence and mental clarity we haven't seen from him before. The combination of speed, consistency, and this new bulletproof mentality makes him incredibly dangerous. The fact that he's already looking ahead, planning to analyze where McLaren wasn't quick enough despite winning, shows a champion's mindset. He's not getting comfortable with success. He's using it as fuel to improve further. As the season heads toward its conclusion, Norris has sent a clear message to everyone doubting his championship credentials. He's not just ignoring the critics anymore. He's proving them wrong, one victory at a time. With this mental transformation complete, the question isn't whether he can handle the pressure of a title fight, but whether anyone can stop him from claiming his first world championship. What happens when a 7-time world champion calls his own weekend a complete disaster? Lewis Hamilton just delivered one of the most brutally honest assessments we've heard from a Formula One driver this season, and it reveals something deeply concerning about Ferrari's current trajectory. At the Brazilian Grand Prix, Hamilton didn't just struggle. He was eliminated in the second qualifying session, landing him in 13th place on the grid. But here's what makes this story fascinating. This isn't just about one bad qualifying session. This is about a pattern that's been haunting Hamilton all year, and his raw honesty about it tells us everything we need to know about where Ferrari really stands right now. Let me paint you the picture of what went wrong at Interlagos. Hamilton was constantly on the radio with his race engineer, and his messages were increasingly desperate. He kept talking about the rear tires, how he couldn't get them to work, couldn't get them up to temperature, couldn't find any grip. This wasn't a driver making excuses. This was a champion genuinely baffled by his own car. The most telling moment came when Hamilton said the setup was actually fine. Think about that for a second. The car's baseline was good, but he simply couldn't make the tires function properly. In Formula One, tire management isn't just important, it's everything. And when a driver of Hamilton's caliber can't solve tire temperature issues, that points to something fundamentally wrong with either the car's characteristics or the team's understanding of how to set it up. What makes this even more intriguing is the contrast with his teammate Charles Leclerc. While Hamilton was struggling in 13th, Leclerc qualified 3rd and was eyeing another podium finish. This creates a fascinating dynamic within Ferrari. Are they developing a car that suits one driving style over another? Or is Hamilton simply having the kind of season where nothing seems to click? Hamilton's admission that he's not expecting anything from the race itself is particularly striking. On a track like Interlagos, where he famously fears you can't overtake, starting 13th essentially means writing off any chance of a meaningful result. But his comment about it being another write-off weekend suggests this isn't an isolated incident. It's part of a larger pattern that's been plaguing his entire season. The psychological aspect here is crucial. Hamilton has been one of the most mentally resilient drivers in Formula One history. He's bounced back from setbacks that would crush other drivers. But when he says things just continue to go bad every weekend, you can hear the frustration creeping in. This isn't the confident Lewis Hamilton we're used to hearing. This is a champion genuinely questioning why things aren't working. What's particularly interesting is how this reflects on Ferrari as a whole. The team sits 3rd in the Constructors' Championship, just 6 points behind Mercedes and 11 ahead of Red Bull. On paper, they're competitive. But Hamilton's struggles suggest there might be deeper issues with their approach to car development and race weekend execution. The tire temperature problem Hamilton described isn't just a technical issue, it's a window into Ferrari's entire philosophy. In modern Formula One, teams spend enormous resources understanding tire behavior. The fact that Hamilton repeatedly couldn't get his rears to the right temperature suggests either the car has fundamental characteristics that make this difficult, or Ferrari's approach to tire management isn't optimal. There's also the broader question of whether Ferrari built their car around Leclerc's driving style. Throughout the season, we've seen Leclerc consistently outperform Hamilton, which is unusual given Hamilton's track record. This could indicate that the SF25 requires a specific approach that suits Leclerc better, leaving Hamilton struggling to adapt. The timing of this struggle is particularly poignant, given Hamilton's upcoming move to Mercedes. His final season with Ferrari was supposed to be a triumphant farewell tour. Instead, it's becoming a series of frustrating weekends where one of the greatest drivers in history can't extract performance from his machinery. But here's what makes Hamilton's honesty so valuable. It gives us genuine insight into what's really happening inside a top Formula One team. Most drivers would deflect or make generic comments about working harder. Hamilton's willingness to say this is another write-off weekend reveals the true emotional toll of underperforming when you know you're capable of so much more. Looking at the bigger picture, Hamilton's struggles highlight just how fine the margins are in Formula One. The difference between a car that works and one that doesn't can be measured in hundredths of seconds and degrees of tire temperature. When everything clicks, drivers look like geniuses. When it doesn't, even seven-time world champions look ordinary. This situation also raises questions about Ferrari's technical direction. Are they prioritizing the wrong aspects of car development? Are they missing something fundamental about tire behavior that other teams understand? Hamilton's experience and feedback should be invaluable. So if he can't solve these problems, it suggests the issues run deeper than just driver technique. As we head toward the end of the season, Hamilton's frustration becomes a compelling storyline. Will Ferrari find solutions to these persistent problems? Can Hamilton rediscover his form in the remaining races? Or will this challenging season continue to unfold as a series of write-off weekends for one of Formula One's greatest champions? The Formula One world is buzzing with controversy after a dramatic incident at the Brazilian Grand Prix that could reshape the championship battle in ways nobody saw coming. Two rising stars just moved dangerously close to missing an entire race, and the ripple effects are already sending shockwaves through the paddock. Picture this. You're watching what should be a routine sprint race at Interlagos, and suddenly two drivers who represent the future of Formula One are locked in a bitter collision that threatens to derail their seasons entirely. This isn't just about damaged cars or lost points anymore. We're talking about potential race bans that could change everything. Oliver Bearman and Liam Lawson found themselves at the center of a heated controversy during Saturday's sprint race that has now escalated into something much bigger. What started as a racing incident has evolved into a disciplinary nightmare that puts both drivers on thin ice with the sport's governing body. The drama unfolded at Turn 4 during the opening lap of the sprint race. Bearman, driving for Haas, appeared to squeeze Lawson toward the grass on the approach to the corner. The Racing Bulls driver found himself with limited options on cold, damp tires that weren't providing the grip he desperately needed. When Bearman then turned into the corner, contact was inevitable. The collision sent Bearman spinning, effectively ruining both drivers' sprint race chances. But the real fireworks started over the team radios, where neither driver held back their frustration. Lawson's angry response painted a picture of a driver who felt he'd been pushed into an impossible situation, while Bearman's dismissive reaction suggested this wasn't their first on-track disagreement. The stewards immediately launched an investigation, and their findings have created a fascinating precedent for how racing incidents are handled when both drivers bear some responsibility. Rather than placing all the blame on hascontrins2b.com and gone, one party, they handed out penalties to both competitors, acknowledging that each had contributed to the collision in their own way. Bearman received his punishment for what officials deemed potentially dangerous driving on the straight between turns 3 and 4. The squeeze that forced Lawson onto the grass was seen as an unnecessary risk that directly led to the subsequent contact. Meanwhile, Lawson was penalized for causing the actual collision at Turn 4, despite his arguments that cold tires and Bearman's earlier move had left him powerless to avoid the incident. Each driver received a 5-second time penalty for their role in the collision, but more significantly, both were handed penalty points on their racing licenses. This is where the story becomes truly concerning for both competitors and their teams. Formula One operates under a penalty point system that was introduced back in 2014 to address persistent, dangerous driving. When a driver accumulates 12 penalty points within any 12-month period, they automatically face a one-race suspension. It's a nuclear option that the sport has only used once before, but both Bearman and Lawson are now walking a tightrope. The latest penalty points have pushed Bearman to 9 points total, leaving him just 3 away from a mandatory ban. His precarious position stems from a series of incidents throughout the season, including a costly mistake at Silverstone where he crashed at pit entry under red flag conditions, earning him 4 penalty points in a single incident. Lawson now sits on 7 penalty points, tied for second place on Formula One's unofficial disciplinary leaderboard. His previous transgressions include multiple collision-related penalties, painting a picture of an aggressive driver who perhaps needs to recalibrate his approach to wheel-to-wheel racing. The timing of these penalties couldn't be worse for either driver. Both are fighting to establish themselves in Formula One's ultra-competitive environment, where every race weekend provides crucial opportunities to prove their worth to team principals and sponsors alike. A race ban would not only cost them valuable track time, but could also damage their reputations at a critical stage in their careers. What makes this situation particularly intriguing is how it reflects the broader challenges facing young drivers in modern Formula One. The sport demands aggressive racing to capture attention and secure future opportunities, but that same aggression can quickly cross the line into dangerous territory. Both Behrman and Lawson are learning this lesson the hard way. The penalty point system has proven effective at curbing the most reckless driving behaviors, but it also creates a psychological burden for drivers who find themselves approaching the 12-point threshold. Every subsequent race weekend becomes a balancing act between competitive instinct and self-preservation. For Behrman, the mathematics are particularly concerning. His penalty points won't begin expiring until May 2026, meaning he'll spend the next several months knowing that any significant incident could trigger an automatic suspension. That kind of pressure can fundamentally change how a driver approaches racing, potentially stifling the very aggression that made them attractive prospects in the first place. The Brazilian Grand Prix incident also highlights the subjective nature of racing penalties and how different stewards might interpret identical situations differently. Both drivers genuinely believed they were the wronged party, yet both received punishment from officials who saw shared responsibility. Looking ahead, this controversy serves as a crucial learning moment for two drivers who represent Formula One's future. How they respond to this setback, both in terms of their on-track behavior and their ability to manage the psychological pressure of being on penalty point probation, could define their careers. The message from the governing body is clear. Modern Formula One won't tolerate repeated dangerous driving, regardless of a driver's potential or popularity. As both Behrman and Lawson prepare for future race weekends, they'll need to find ways to maintain their competitive edge while avoiding the kind of incidents that could end their seasons prematurely.